The Big Mountain rebuilds the PAC. Who's going to get an invite?
Conference realignment is always in the news, so we're back on the Big Mountain to play a little game and have some fun.
Hey, it's great to have you here on the mountain again. I am JY, and this is my good friend Steve. Steve, we had another viewer ask for a hypothetical from us. We just did one not too long ago on the Mountain West, and who could they look to either add to backfill any lost teams, or if they were looking to expand to 14, 16 football schools, who would they look to add? We got a commenter a little bit after that asking us to rebuild the PAC, and what schools would the Big Mountain look at and use to rebuild the PAC. As a lot of our viewers know, we have followed the PAC since August of last year through the thick and thin. As Steve said, we're Beaver believers and Cougar chasers, I think is what you said. But anyway, fans of the Beavs and Cougs. And I'm wearing my Mr. Toad's Wild Ride shirt because it has been a wild ride for these two schools. And we're going to try to build them a PAC here, Steve. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds great. And just to be clear, I'm not actually chasing any Cougars, but I am a big fan and supporter of the Washington State Cougs because they got a bad hand dealt to them, and they're doing their best, and I'm a big fan of theirs. So,
as our good buddy Lonnie, one of our commenters, said, Steve, I hope it's only one Coug at this point, and I can guarantee you it is. Steve's a good guy, good husband. So anyway, we like to have some fun, and we're going to have some fun. So we put a list together. I've got my teams, you've got your teams. And this is for fun. You can agree with us, disagree with us. Tell us maybe who we missed and who you would look to add. I think we tried to do this somewhat realistically. Like, we didn't just say, well, yeah, you're going to take all of the old PAC. No. You're not going to get all of the schools back. So I think our definition of realistically maybe is a little bit different. Yeah. So we're going to let Steve start. He's going to go over all the schools. I'll comment, and then we'll talk about mine, and we'll see how much we agree and how much we disagree. So go for it, Steve.
Yeah, so first of all, for mine, I'm operating under the assumption that we're rebuilding the PAC, starting with Oregon State and Washington State. And, as far as the most likely scenario, I still say, like we've talked about many times, the most likely scenario is some kind of a merger between what's left of the PAC and the Mountain West. But for this, I tried to expand my horizons a little bit and have some other assumptions. So my assumptions for this, the way I approached it is basically the ACC with Florida State, Clemson, basically suing to get out the door and possibly more teams to follow. I'm assuming at least kind of a partial collapse of the ACC, where maybe everybody is looking around, looking if there's better options. And I'm also assuming maybe there's just a little, some possible discontent in the Big 12, because I think you have to have, both of those factors to maybe have any realistic possibility of the PAC to pull back some teams. So that's what I'm starting on. I created my best 12-team Pacific Conference based on those criteria, based on those assumptions, and I did 2 divisions. I don't know how they would actually do it, but for me, just made sense to do it in 2 divisions. So I'm going to start with my Pacific Coast Division.
Okay.
And so in my Pacific Coast Division, I have Oregon State and Washington State. I think it just makes sense to keep them together. They're right next door. They're buddies. They're battle buddies in this. So we'll keep them together. I also, this might seem kind of like to some a no-brainer, and to others, especially some of the PAC and Mountain West fans that might be watching this, we don't want the next 2 teams. But I'm going on to the assumption with the ACC falling apart, Cal and Stanford come back to their senses. They get off their high and mighty horse or whatever they were on before. Right. They come back to their senses. They accept reality, and they go ahead and come back. Because I think, again, I don't know if that's going to happen, but I feel like that's more realistic than trying to pull, an ACC team, historic ACC team, which just didn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
So far we have Oregon State, Washington State, and I have Cal and Stanford returning.
Okay.
So I wanted to, 2 divisions of 6, I wanted to finish out the West Coast. The next one was very easy for me. San Diego State. I mean, they had their foot out of the door of the Mountain West before. We're ready to accept an invite to the PAC that never came. And I think that it would make a great addition to rebuilding the PAC. You get that Southern California market. San Diego State, great basketball school. Yeah. They have potential on the football side. They've had some up years and down years. Beautiful new stadium, great market. So I'm going with San Diego State. And the way I round out my 6 team, there's a lot of California schools and West Coast schools, but the way I round out is Fresno State. I think they make a good 6 team in there.
Yeah.
They're obviously, I think they're probably a little weaker candidate than San Diego State and the first 4 that were previously in the pack, but I think they make a good addition to kind of round out the conference strong in football. They're keep that another California market in play, right, which helps for TV revenue and stuff like that. So Pacific Coast Division, 6 teams. I have Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, Stanford, Fresno State, and San Diego State. Before I move over to my other division, do you have any comments on that, or are you going to hold them?
I like it. So far, we're off to a very a start that'll match mine. Maybe for a little bit other. I think overall, your rationale will match my rationale. One of mine you're going to hear me say is they absolutely have to get into California. That was obviously one of my criteria, and not one school in California, but
right,
they need to get back into, especially SoCal.
Yes.
You got to get back into California. Well, if you know you're going to pull 1 or 2 schools, there's only so many schools that you can pull from. So
Absolutely.
that kind of limits who we're going to be talking about. So similarities here, but let's keep going. I'm more anxious. I think that Pacific is maybe easier than
yes,
what this next one's going to be. So I'm anxious for your next group, and I don't know what you're going to call it. The Mountain.
So for now, I have it called the Mountain Plains. Okay. So my other division, I was really looking at some teams that are basically, I was kind of looking at Mountain West teams and some Big 12 teams that maybe were in the pack before, or that could return, or other teams that might just be looking, maybe they could get dissatisfied with the Big 12, with the TV deal, how they're treated, whatever. So that's kind of where I started. So I have Mountain Plains as my other division. So first of all, right out of the gate, I'm going with Boise State. They're my number 1 draft pick out of the Mountain West, okay, so to speak. Just, great football program, really solid basketball program as well. They've kind of been on that cusp of a old-fashioned G5 team that is playing with the big boys. They've shown it. They would make they're not in a big market or anything like that, but they have fan interest. They have national attention. So right out of the gate, Boise State. My next pick is someone that you're familiar with, pretty familiar. And this may surprise you. I went with Wyoming.
That very much surprises me.
So I was looking at, we had a chart that we showed before of the basically the different scores of the attractiveness for the different teams. I was looking at the Mountain West, and Wyoming was kind of on the edge of that. I decided to bring them in. They're something you brought to my attention. They're the only public land grant university in the state of Wyoming, the only public university. Right. They've had some good football success lately, so with some alumni playing in the NFL. I just thought it was a way to kind of bring some good football balance to this conference. So I went with Wyoming, but they were kind of on my edge, on the edge.
So, and I don't know where you're going with the rest of your. I'm trying not to look down. I don't want to cheat. But I will say, that's southern Wyoming. So if a play is to get into Colorado, we'll see what else you're going to say here. But you're definitely getting the northern Colorado, the Denver north type of area. It is Wyoming, and yes, it's their only public land grant university. But there's a lot of Colorado interest in that area.
So that'll lead me to my next 2 schools. So 2 of them, 2 schools that were higher up on the list for Mountain West as far as their attractiveness score. And so I've got Air Force and Colorado State. Okay. Air Force, they're a service academy, but to me, they're kind of at a different level than just an Army or a Navy. Even though I love Navy, they're just a different level as far as national attention. They've kind of been able to branch out and do more things than just the old-fashioned things that Army and Navy have done. And they had a very high attractiveness score on the TJ Altimore chart that he put out. So for the Mountain West, they were one of the most attractive. And like what you just said, Air Force and Colorado State gets you into Colorado, gets you Denver and all those other, towns in Colorado, all those small, medium cities that have been growing. Population has been shifting from California to Colorado. So I just thought that would be a solid place for them. So I went with Air Force and Colorado State to pair with Boise and Wyoming. Okay. That takes me to my last 2 teams. And these, I'm sure some fans might have some pushback and say, oh, that's not realistic. So first of all, my number 1 is I have Utah, coming back to the Pac-12. I've seen some reporting that they were very hesitant about moving to the Big 12, not really wanting to be in the same conference as BYU. There's kind of like, I would say it's not even a rivalry, almost like a hatred between the schools.
Yeah.
And
well, they're very close.
They are, yeah. And so
geographically.
Right. Yeah. So I have Utah coming back. And I believe they're the only school I saw some reporting that when they moved to the Big 12, they didn't sign a long-term commitment to stay in the Big 12. So for whatever reason, I think that would make a great addition if you could bring Utah back. They've been great success on the field the last 10 years. Just a huge growing market in Utah, in the Salt Lake City area. And I just think they would make a great addition if you could pull them back. And I understand maybe it's not super realistic, but I think out of the teams that left the PAC, went to the Big 12, I think Utah they have the best chance of bringing them back. One of the best chances.
Okay.
So, and then my last team. Okay, this may be a little bit of a stretch.
Okay.
I went with TCU. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I thought in the past, the PAC, 10, 12, 15 years ago, the PAC was really interested in getting into Texas. They tried to get University of Texas, Texas A&M, to move down into that Texas market. And for me, I'm just kind of going on the assumption there's some discontent in the Big 12 with the new teams coming in. And, TCU in that Dallas market, that would be a huge coup. If they were really trying to rebuild the PAC and get into the Texas market, this could be a crown jewel. It would put TCU in kind of a tough position. They wouldn't be close to any of the other schools that I have there. But I just thought, if they were trying to get back into Texas, that would be a school that they could go after. And TCU had a very high value on Tony Outmore's his expansion target value list. So that's what I went with. So for the Mountain Plains, I've got Boise and Wyoming, Air Force, Colorado State, Utah, and TCU.
Okay. All right. I like it, and we definitely have some differences.
Okay.
And I want to be clear, we didn't say this to start, but we both agreed that we were only going to take 4 ACC or Big 12 schools.
Right.
Obviously, we have Oregon State and Washington State, so there's 6.
Maximum of 4.
Maximum of 4, correct. Yep. Maximum of 4. So there's 6 coming from what was the power conferences.
Right.
And so we'd have to pull the others from Group of 5 or FCS.
Correct.
And you decided not to go FCS, which doesn't surprise me.
Yep.
I am going to throw a few FCS out there. I know that will not make any former Power 5 school happy to hear, but I think and I'm bringing them because of contingency plans. It's not, I think you should go get this school. I'm going to throw out, if you can't get this school, then you probably want to look at trying to get this school. So I did just a few contingency plans for some of this.
Makes sense.
So let's get into it, Steve. We agree, I would say about 75%, 80%. So I'm going to go over, I'm going to start with, I didn't do a division thing. I appreciate that. And I think the schools I say would fit into similar types of divisions. I'm going to go over, I guess you could say I power rank these-ish. But what I focused on first was, where do they want to get back into? What states does a PAC need to be in?
Very smart.
Have to be in my opinion, if you're going to be what they think they can build, or what the fans at least think they can build. And there's three states that I said they've got to have at least one school, if not 2, in California, Colorado, and Utah. You've got to be in those states. So I kind of started with that. My first one, and this hits just about every daggone point that you could hit, and that's San Diego State. Yeah. They're number 1 on my list. We all know that they only a few years ago were trying to get out of the Mountain West. That kind of fell apart. Probably good for them at this part. They're part of a conference right now, unlike some other schools. But again, we know their history there. They're in that Southern California market. They've got money. They've got, it's a no-brainer that you would go after San Diego State. I don't need to talk about them too much because it's so freaking obvious, right? So they're my number 1. My number 2 and 3, maybe not as obvious, but again, I keep these up there, A, because of geography, and B, because they want to elevate. They don't want to be a G5. Right. They want to be call it a P, but something better than a G5.
One of the autonomous.
One of the autonomous. That's what they want. Yeah. So my number 2 here is Utah. I agree with you. You look back at them. If I'm Utah, does the fit work in the Big 12 for them, or if there's going to be a PAC 2.0, Pac-12 2.0, is that a better fit for you? I would think a PAC 2.0 is going to be better for Utah. So I've got them up number 2 on my list. Great school, former member, possibly looking to get out of the Big 12. I mean, that's pure speculation. I don't know if they're looking to get out of the Big 12, but they're new.
Yep.
It may not be a great fit for them, and if they have another option, this could be the option for them. So
love it. Makes a lot of sense.
I've got them number 2. Number 3, and I hear what you said about this school, and maybe my 2 and 3 are slightly contingent upon each other. They've got to get one of these two. Yeah. My number 3 is BYU, actually.
Yeah.
And so, yes, do you want both of them or not? I'd go after both of them because to me, you need one of them. Yep. You must get one of them. But I have BYU actually here as my number 3 school, again, for some of the same reasons as Utah. Now, do they want, you mentioned some of that stuff. BYU is what we got from Mountain West people. Yes. And I get all that, but if you're the PAC, you can't care too much about that. And if there's a rivalry somewhat there, you want that stuff. Yep. I mean, and the location for them is beautiful. So I've got BYU as number 3. Number 4, going to Colorado. So I hit Cali, I hit Utah. I got to go to Colorado. CSU is the school that I'm taking at my number 4. Again, you must get in there. I think it's a great step for them. I would not, as a Mountain West guy, I'd hate to see them leave the Mountain West. But that's the school, if I'm looking, that's the school I'm really going after in Colorado. Good, they're kind of in that just a little bit north central area there. And I'd be going CSU. So to me, if you're going to make this work, you need 3 of those 4. All right. I mean, to me, you got to make them all because I picked all of them, but you got to at least get 3 of those 4. 100%. Yep. So then we go to our friends. The groans are going to come, and I agree with you. You try to look at pulling back the Stanford and the Cal. It only makes sense. I don't know if they come back, if they still have whatever up their butt about it, but the premier West Coast League only makes sense for them to be a part of that. To not have them on your list is just biased for someone. If they're going to try to do this hypothetically, you've got to include them.
And can I say real quick on those two? I think they want to stay together, and they went together to the ACC.
Yeah.
But I think there is some wiggle room, some separation if you could get one and not the other.
Yeah.
Cal is under a lot of financial pressure. They have major financial problems. So let's say you went after the 2 and Stanford didn't want to come back because there's too uppity.
Yeah.
I think you could get a Cal maybe because of the costs of all of that athletic travel and the financial problems they've had.
Okay. Well, and my next one is another California school, so I'm going heavy. This will be my 4th California school. Some of them, again, maybe if you can't get one of them, you got to backfill with this. But again, Fresno State, you said it.
Yep.
I agree. Great location for them. And I'd be looking at the Bulldogs. Another school I'd hate to see leave the Mountain West. Yep. Just a fantastic school there. But so that's 6 out of 7 that we agree with. Now we're going to get I'm going to get some new schools out there. And I got to be honest with you, I started to struggle. I really started to struggle with this. So my number 8 school, not a school that you said, but UNLV. Because you get it, you're down in the bottom part of Nevada, you get Southern Cal, you get Arizona. I mean, it's just a lot of influence all around there, growing, big school, good facilities, all that kind of stuff. So I went UNLV. I don't disagree with the schools that you said, but I went UNLV just because it's a different area. I'll compare them to Air Force, for example. It's a different area. You're already getting CSU, and you took Wyoming, Air Force. They're all fairly central there. If you can kind of get down to get a buddy with San Diego State with UNLV, that's where I'm going with my number 8.
They were my first team out, basically. So.
First team out? Okay. Honorable mention went to the Rebels. All right. So I got UNLV here at number 8. And then I really started to have to think. And let me go back and just talk about Air Force real quick. In my opinion, and maybe I shouldn't have used this as part of rebuilding a PAC, but I think if Air Force is going anywhere, they're going to go to join Navy and Army in the same conference.
Could be.
I don't see why they would want to leave the Mountain West for a PAC. They could. I mean, we have no idea. Yeah. But I kind of left them in the Mountain West because, to me, if they're going to move, they're probably moving to the American in my mind. So I kind of bypassed them. And the top 5, you mentioned that attractiveness score. The top 5 Mountain West schools, San Diego State, We both talk about them. They're number 1. I'm going to skip number 2 because they're my next team. Number 3 was Air Force. Number 4 was Colorado State. And number 5 was Fresno. We talked about them. So my number 9 team is Boise. And the reason I have Boise so far down is I don't think Boise's looking to leave the Mountain West. So realistically, is that a team that you can get? I don't know. Everybody likes to talk about Boise because they do have the name recognition. They're in that geographical area. But I don't. They got it good in the Mountain West. They get paid extra to be a football team there, and I don't know. You got to take them because they are the name. They're in the right area. Again, you can't leave them off the list, but I don't think they're a sure thing as what some people do. But they are my number 9 team here. Then I'm stretching, Steve. Yeah. So here's where I have a team with several contingencies added upon them, and a team that you didn't talk about. I'm going to get groans because it's not a Power 5 school, but it goes back to what you said about getting into Texas, and it's a team that we really looked at with the Mountain West episode, and that's UTEP. Again, I'm sure there's groaning right now that I bring up UTEP. I mean, if you can go further east and you're interested in a UTSA would be fantastic. If a TCU is interested, absolutely. But you really have to look at, I didn't mention Texas in my top 3 states that you want to get into. But
if you could get into it.
But if you can get into it, you absolutely are. I, of course, took the westernmost school, UTEP, that I think has potential there. Maybe not the greatest fit. I know the Beavs and Cougs fans will likely not agree with me.
They're going to veto. They're going to blow the veto pen on you.
Yeah, so my 10th school, I mean, really the 12th school, my 1 and 2 are OSU and WSU. So the last school that I get in is a UTEP or Texas school. Again, I picked UTEP. And then if that's not available, I have contingencies mainly for California schools. So if the Cal Stanford thing doesn't work out, or if the Fresno thing, they want to stay in the Mountain West, just that kind of that area of California, I drop down to FCS schools. I say, look at Sacramento State, look at UC Davis. You're not going to get all 10 of the schools that I named.
Right.
It's not going to happen. Would it be great? That's this hypothetical. These are the schools we think you can get.
Right.
So I'm giving honorable mentions. UTEP will be my legit 10th or 12th school. My honorable mentions, you got to give FCS schools a look, and the ones that I'm throwing out there are ones that got a lot of love on our Mountain West because we excluded them from the Mountain West. But that's Sac State and UC Davis. I'm not going Montana here with the PAC like we did with the Mountain West. Certainly not going to the Dakotas like we did with the Mountain West. I am looking at that Central California spot. So
makes sense.
There's where we're at, Steve. What do you think about my list?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Very similar list. I think where we differ was it ended up being like you said before we came on. What's reasonable? Okay, for me, I have us dipping into the well, maybe a little bit more of some schools that might be a little bit of tougher pull.
That's okay.
And you have some contingencies if you can't get those. And where do you put that reasonable meter kind of thing? So, but I think all of this makes sense. And like I said, you and I agreed on a whole bunch of these, and I agree on your priorities. I didn't really lay out those priorities, but I think really they have to solidify California in some way and get to me in San Diego. I had San Diego State. I had them pulling back Calford. And Fresno State. I think we both had all 4 of those, right?
We did. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the way to solidify California.
Yep.
But if you don't get some of those, what contingencies do you have?
Right.
What are your backup plans?
Right. So maybe I went a little further than I needed to. Yeah. Like I said, to get the 8 to join the 2, to get to a Pac-10, I found much easier than me struggling to get that 11th. For me, the 11th and 12th team was much more difficult for me, and mainly because I just don't think Boise's going to leave. But that's just my opinion. So let's summarize this, and then our commenters can agree, disagree, throw other schools out. So we agree on to add to the Beavs and the Cougs. Obviously, that's 1 and 2. So 3 would be San Diego State, and this is in no particular order, but San Diego State, Stanford, Cal, and Fresno State in California. So we're adding 4 California schools. We also have Utah that we agree with, and CSU that we agree with, and Boise State that we agree with. So that's, was that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 schools, plus the Bees and the Cougs. So 9 schools that we agree on, and those were them. The ones we disagree on, you've got YO, Air Force, and TCU. Yep. So you got a Wyoming school, a Colorado school, and a Texas school. I've got BYU, UNLV, and UTEP, a Utah school, a Nevada school, and a Texas school.
Yep.
And I mean, if you can get TCU, scratch off UTEP and go take TCU.
Right.
That's a no-brainer for me. But yeah, so hey,
hence the we might have different ideas on what's reasonable.
Yes, hey, but that's why we do this.
Yes.
It's for fun.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, I don't know if there's too many other schools that we actually missed out there. There's a few that may have some interest. I mean, I would like to see if somebody's comments on Colorado, the Buffs. But I would look at that, and I made a note. Would any Big 12 teams look to leave a power conference to come to the PAC? And yes, we included Utah. Both of us included Utah, and I think that's a legit add. I mean, I do think that's the one school that's legit. Did we stretch with BYU and TCU? Maybe a little
Probably,
bit more.
yeah.
But, why would anybody leave the Big 12? I don't know.
I think you have to, in the assumptions, like I talked about, the assumptions of there would have to be some kind of discontent in the Big 12 or turmoil with the new schools that came in, or possibly with if the ACC were to need to rebuild and steal a bunch of, maybe Big 12 schools, whatever. But yeah, I agree. That's definitely where we're both stretching a little bit, is the dipping back into the Big 12.
For sure. Well, we hope you like this. We had a lot of fun. Steve has a great idea for our next hypothetical. Do you want to tease it?
Yeah, so we're going to do... neither one of us think that we're on the cusp of a Super League, and we don't really think that the SEC or the Big Ten are gonna get rid of members or whatever. But if something major were to happen and the whole thing blows up and we have to rebuild it, we're gonna do a draft, and we're gonna alternate picks on if we were starting over from scratch, something happened dramatic, a 32 team Super League. How would we build it? Kind of AFC, NFC style. JY and I are going to draft. We're going to take turns picking the best 32 teams that we could pick. And not just their success on the field, but building that whole league, the best market that would be, the most value to network partners.
Yeah, kind of a little bit off of our college football 2030 series. We want that to be very...
predictive.
It's very serious about what we really think is going to happen. This is going to be more for fun, or it is going to be for fun, and I think it's a great idea. So I'm glad you thought of that. We'll try to get that one out next week. So make sure, you like this episode. Subscribe if you like our content. We'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.